David, what's up? First podcast.
Man, we are here, Kyle. What are you doing?
I'm at my house. Sunday night. Just got the kids ready for bed. School tomorrow, big week, and it's the end of the weekend. What about you?
Had some training event in Columbia, South Carolina, Friday and Saturday. Today, spent some time with the family, and then also did an event at a local church. And I'm sitting in my wonderful plush office here in Conway, South Carolina.
Are you at your office, not your house?
I am at the office currently right now.
Oh,
Yep,
jeez.
still in Conway. So,
Bless you, man.
yeah, man.
Well, we won't go too long. Well, thank you everyone for who's listening. First podcast episode for Fittest of the Coast. Actually, if you've been with us for a while, I was looking through the archives of all the content we've created over the years. We actually had a pseudo podcast called The Coastal Wave, which we started, the first year or second year of Fittest of the Coast, where David and I actually did some stuff, interviewed different people, but thought, hey, let's bring this back and let's really have the opportunity to share some stories over the years. Going into year 5, we have a story or two to tell that might create some laughs, give you a little inside information or get inside look at, what is this thing, Fittest of the Coast, and all that goes into it, and just get the opportunity to connect and maybe answer some questions and just have some fun during the summertime before we get into the qualifier. David, why'd you hop on here?
Well, you asked me to, number one, and I like hanging out with you, talking shop and doing different things. But also, man, it's been a fun journey, and I think communicating that story, letting people know some of the insides, some of the things they don't know about it, and just kind of also reminding us of things that have happened over the years, and just what's happened with this is kind of cool to look back on. So that's why.
Yeah, it has been an absolute fun journey, and I think I hope that those that listen to this and consume some of this content, whether it's 30 seconds, whether it's a whole episode, is that we are really passionate about this, about Fittest of the Coast. It has been a big part of my life over the last 4 years. It's been a big part of David's life, and really just share. So I think the easiest thing to do is before we get going, just share a little bit about who we are and what we're passionate about, right? So we've been doing this a lot. You might see us at the different events, and one of the things that's the biggest things that annoys me about events, David, is that we're running this event and we're so busy we never get the chance to connect with people, and I dislike it because we run around with like our chickens with their head cut off, and you might say, hey, how's it going? You get to have like a 5-second conversation, but we miss out on a lot of that relationship building. I think that's why the qualifier has been such a important thing for me, is we've been able to generate relationships through the online qualifier. So hopefully you can get a little bit more about us through this podcast. And for those that don't know, my name's Kyle Oland. I'm the event director of Fittest of the Coast, and the person that started this many years ago, and just have a passion for this, man. Just love CrossFit, love fitness, love putting something together, and love building something special that we can all be proud of. And I hope if you take part in Fittest of the Coast, you have some memorable experiences. It's why we do what we do. But yeah, it's a little bit about me. David?
Yeah, I don't. My name is David Neese. I've lived in the Myrtle Beach area for almost 10 years now. Came here to work with students as a campus minister at Coastal Carolina University. And while I've been here, CrossFit has been an integral part of my life. Kind of found it the year before we moved down here. And just in general, CrossFit's kind of changed. I look back and changed really the trajectory of who I am. Was overweight. I've always struggled with some food issues. And I really enjoy food. That's part of who I am. I like to eat, but I also was not exercising properly and things like that. And so part of the journey itself for me has just been finding balance with working out in a community, but also being fit, if you will. I don't really know what my title is, except for co-MC for the qualifier, and then problem solver / fire extinguisher for events. I do get to walk around and talk to people sometimes at the events, and sometimes those conversations are good, and sometimes I'm the person you come talk to when things have not gone so well and we have to fix something that we have messed up or something has happened. So I get both sides of that, but man, I just enjoy being a part of the action, enjoy seeing these events come to life. And so that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, I think as we kind of go through this, we'll probably share more about our personal journeys within the sport of CrossFit, from competing to just our first workouts, what we like, what we dislike, but more to come on that. I think, David, the start of Fittest of the Coast, what is your earliest memory?
I remember you and I having a conversation about it when you were first dreaming it up. I remember it. I remember you creating a shirt saying "The Open Matters," and I remember going around New York City, interviewing or saying things, looking for you at one point about that as well. But I remember it being the open, and I remember for me, just to be honest, I'd gotten to a point where I didn't really think the open mattered at all for a guy of what I did. And so you were there, you were taking the open and using it as the first qualifier for an event you were going to put on, which in fact inspired a bunch of people to sign up for the open that year. I thought, I remember it being, do you remember that? I mean, like, is that accurate?
The Open Matters. Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
tagline for year one. And I think we'll kind of get into taglines when we think about the strategy, which those are the things I love talking about in the marketing. But yeah, the Open Matters, that's right on. So, so Fittest, so that's David's first memory. And I'll share a little bit about it, how it started. So it would have been 2019, the summer of 2019. My wife, Morgan, was in Mexico for her cousin's wedding, and I was sitting at my dining room table eating lunch on a Saturday afternoon, scrolling through Instagram. And I saw a competition. Actually, it was Fittest of the Upstate at the time. I think they ran their first event. I thought to myself, dude, that's a great idea.
Wow.
We should do that. And messaged the people that ran it, jumped on a phone conversation with them. And they're like, yeah, we'd love for you to do something. That's cool. Yeah, do it. And they kind of said, hey, this is what we do. Maybe you could do something similar. So I was like, yeah, let me give it a go. So I tell my wife when she gets back, hey, I'm going to start a CrossFit event. And she's like, what? I was like, yeah, I'm going to start a CrossFit event. And she's like, all right, well, let's do it. And I think it's more than just starting a CrossFit event, because it's not like, hey, we just randomly decided to do a CrossFit event. Like, competitions were a big part of our life. And it's how David and I met through the competition Beach Town Throwdown, right, David?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So like we helped out with that, which is based out of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, competition that our home gym did. And we helped out it for many years. And I learned how events ran and all that. And whenever you help with events, you're always like, hey, if I did this is how I'd put my spin on it. And I always thought that, hey, there's things that I would do differently. And we all have that, and have your ways in which you do things. So when this thought came in my mind, which if I'm being honest, it's something I'd been praying about for many years, that God would put something on my heart that I was truly passionate about. And then when that came into my heart, I was like, this is it. This is what we need to do. And through that, we wanted to differentiate from the event that I mentioned, Fittest of the Upstate, say, hey, how can we take our own spin on it and eventually adapt? And what we were in 2019 isn't what we are today. And it was all part of a strategic plan that, hey, we need to grow and make this bigger. That way there's more opportunity, but we'll get into that more as we go. But yeah, started at the dining room table. And then we did a qualifier through the open. Then we had our first event at Iron Bridge and Iron Bridge CrossFit with our friends Donnie and Shannon McDaniel in Charleston, South Carolina. And that was kind of a God thing too, that we knew Donnie and Shannon from their time in Myrtle Beach. And I remember calling them up and be like, hey guys, I want to do a CrossFit event. I don't own a gym. I don't have any equipment. I don't have nothing. I just have an idea, right? But I got an idea. Can I do it at your gym? Can we use your equipment? and can you just let hundreds of people show up and I'll take care of the rest? And they're like, yeah, sure. Because they're awesome. If you know Donnie and Shannon, they're awesome people. And that's how we did the first year. And then David, what do you remember from the first year?
Well, so yeah, the open back then too was in the fall. So this was like when CrossFit was kind of changing things up. At that point, the time, I'm pretty sure the open was that year was actually in the fall.
Yes,
and
it was.
So, and so, because I remember that's why I was I was in New York City that Christmas, and that's why I was doing the filming, whatever. But for whatever reason, I don't remember what it was, but I wasn't even supposed to be. I wasn't available. Something with work, something happened. I wasn't even supposed to show up to Iron Bridge. And so I was kind of bummed about that. There wasn't a show. We didn't have a show yet or anything like that. But I just knew that I wasn't going to be able. So I remember getting the speaker system for Josh to run the outdoor event. I remember that. I remember certain things. I had worked out at Iron Bridge. I'd done a couple camps down in Charleston over the summer, and Shannon and Donnie had let me work out at Iron Bridge as well, drop-ins, things like that. Great facility. This was their old facility before where they moved into the new facility. But just super welcoming people, great community. And then something happened. I don't know what it was, but I was able to drive down and actually
did whatever you were doing get canceled because of COVID? Because then remember, COVID hit like a week later.
Yeah, I don't know what it was because it must have happened. But where we are now in the calendar, and we can talk about this later, like it wouldn't have been that same event, but if something happened and something got canceled or something, whatever. And so I was able to come down, but my wife was actually competing that first year as well. She had qualified. And
did
so
Amanda compete that year?
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure, I don't want to be wrong about that, but I think she did, because that was the year they did the cleans. Yes. They came inside and did the cleans. Yes. So she was competing that year. So I remember coming down and just jumping in. Like, you gave me freedom to kind of walk around and help wherever. So I was just kind of like throwing weights where I could throw weights and do different things, helping people out. But I just remember there being like an energy and excitement, and just the event happening was awesome. Like, it was great,
Yeah, it really was. It was our first event, and we'll kind of go into a funny story from the event here later. But, what I take from that event was just a sincere amount of gratitude for all the people in our community to just come out to that event. So a first year event, they had no clue who we were, no clue about what we were capable of, right? Sometimes when you go to events, it's a horror situation. I think we've all been to an event or two when we're like, oh my gosh, that was terrible. So, to have people put their trust in you, along with Donnie and Shannon putting their trust in you to not only use their facility, but to honor their facility and leave it in good condition, that meant a lot to me. Because again, we wouldn't be where we are today without that faith, and without Donnie and Shannon. So that was year one. And then the other thing that was crazy is literally a week after that event, bam, COVID.
Just shut everything down.
If that event had been a week later on the calendar, we might not even be talking today, because we might not have ever gotten off the ground as far as Fittest of the Coast goes. So that's a God thing right there, that, hey, that worked out. But yeah, the whole world shut down. And it actually impacted a lot, and it impacted our event, but it actually sped up a timeline for our event. I'll talk through that. So when I mentioned earlier about how we had this event, we mirrored it off of another event, but we wanted to create our own. So the plan was initially, my plan was on the third year, we would have our own qualifier. We were going to use the open for 2 years and then have our own qualifier in the third year. That was the strategic plan. Well, what happened was, because of COVID, and maybe the CrossFit Games changed their season. Was that when they changed their season?
Yeah, everything got bounced back. Remember, they did like an online thing, and then they did a late summer ranch thing.
That's right. So the CrossFit Games got jacked up. They did it at the ranch, and then as a result, they moved the open from the fall
to February.
Back to February, where it was originally. So there was literally a year-long process without no CrossFit Open. It was the longest period of time without a CrossFit Open. So I was like, hey, we cannot wait that long. We will lose the momentum of our event. Because that's another thing when we talk about events and strategy. you can lose momentum, and you don't ever want to lose momentum. So anyway, we decided, hey, we're not going to wait for the CrossFit games to dictate our schedule. I didn't like that either. I said, hey, we have to be the dictator of our schedule. It's the only way we can be successful. So rather than wait for them, we're just going to be proactive. We're going to create our own qualifier. We're going to call it the Coastal Qualifier, which is here we are today. We're going into the third, or are we going to the year 4 of the qualifier? 1, 2, 3. I think we're year 4.
Year 4 of the qualifier.
Yeah, this will be the 4th year of the qualifier,
That's
the
right.
Coastal Qualifier. So what we did was we kind of mirrored it after the CrossFit Open, changed a couple things, but workout was released on a Thursday, and you have until at that time Monday. We've since changed it to Tuesday. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to be able to have a live release party, which was what we have today. And we would visit different gyms and do a live show on YouTube and Facebook. I think when I made it up, I had no idea what we were going to do. I was just like, we'll figure it out as we go. It's typically how we make decisions. Hey, let's just do it, and then we'll figure it out, right? Because you're not going to do something unless you tell yourself you're going to do it.
That's right.
So, yeah, so we picked 4 or 5 gyms. I think we did 5 gyms because we did 5 weeks the first year. We did Ironbridge.
We kicked it off back at Ironbridge. Yep.
And then we went to – did we go CrossFit 843 seconds?
No, I think it was Myrtle Beach, CrossFit Myrtle Beach.
CrossFit Myrtle Beach.
Then you went down to 843.
Then 843.
And then there was
at AJ Johnson's Garage Gym.
Correct.
And then we went to CrossFit Wando, which was the host of year 2.
Correct. It was like a sandwich kind of thing. Yep.
So we picked 5 gyms in the coastal South Carolina area and visited them. And before that, over the summer months, we had figured out where we were going to have our competition for year 2, which we picked CrossFit Wando. We considered, I think, 3 or 4 gyms, and that gym just worked out best. And it ended up being, we'll get to that in a minute, just a phenomenal spot. So, yeah, we do the online qualifier. And at this point, it's a crew of you. I said, how did I get you to come on? What did I tell you?
I have no idea. I have no idea. Well, let me just say this. So I do talk a lot for my job, so I'm comfortable talking. Maybe that's not always the best, but nothing scared me about talking. But you had this idea of hosting. You're like, hey, you would be a good host with me or something like that.
I know what it is. So for those that don't know, so David and I have known each other. We go to the same CrossFit gym, but years ago during the Open, we did everybody had the intramural opens, and we did a show we would record for the Open back in the day. And that's probably, I was like, David, we've done this before. We can do it again. We'll figure it out. So yeah, I picked David, and then we picked Alex, who's my brother-in-law, who you all know Alex. He's the big hype man. He gets everybody going, announces the workout. I have no idea how I decided to tell him to come. I think he wasn't doing anything at the time. So I was like, dude, just come on. I'm not going to lie. I don't know if we knew what his capabilities were until that first week. And then we were like, wow, this guy's gold.
Yeah, because at the first year at Ironbridge, he was he ran the sound system, but he wasn't hot on the mic or anything like that. Yeah.
We didn't really know what we had until year 2.
There was definitely gold to be mined there. We just didn't know it was there.
Yeah. So Alex came with us. Then Kyle Massey, who that's an episode in of itself, a random dude off of Instagram messages me and says, hey, can I make you some videos? I say, sure, man, send me some videos that you've made. And he goes, I've never made a video. So I go, well, make me a video. So then this guy goes into his garage, makes me a video. Turns out to be a great video for the first video someone's ever made. I was like, you look like you could. I was like, yeah, man, I don't really know anybody else. Yeah, you come with us. He ends up being gold. And the rest is history about Kyle. He's taken off.
Yeah.
And then we had Alex Hayes, who's just this little surfer dude who I don't know where he came from. My wife, he worked with my wife at Lululemon, and my wife threatened me that I had to help him out. Otherwise she was going to get mad at me. So then he starts taking photos for us, and now he's some big surf photographer. And so, yeah, that's the 5 of us going down, right?
Yeah, I mean, what a crew, right? And I remember getting in the car and going down, and that first drive down, it was like feeling each other out a little bit. And I also remember driving in a car that made a lot of noise as we were as we were going down as well. But dude, the first time I met Massey was actually at the first year at Iron Bridge. Beach Town Throwdown had a tent there and just some information because our event was coming up later on that summer. And he walked up and started talking to me about competing and stuff. And that's the first time I met him. I didn't even know he did video stuff at the time.
He did.
He didn't, right? He just started to decide to at that point in time. But yeah, that was our first crew.
Yeah. So the crew. So our whole crew, we drove around and went from gym to gym, and it was a ton of fun, man. It was a lot of memories to be made. Staying in hotels, just a dream. If it was a dream, right? It still is a dream. But hey, how could us just 5 random dudes be putting on this online qualifier? I think we had close to 1,000 people in the qualifier. Just living out our dream, loving CrossFit, getting around to meet people, making video content. It was awesome. The qualifier still to this day is my favorite part of the event. It's just so fun. So yeah, we did the qualifier, and then we moved into Wando, and we went to CrossFit Wando, which is in Charleston, South Carolina. Owners are Dan and Sylvia Darby, just absolutely phenomenal people. Like just some of the best people I've ever met. You know, I've had Dan over to my house to work out when he's in Myrtle Beach. Just good people. David, what do you remember about Wando? Because it's a little different for you now, right? Tell us about your Wando experience.
Yeah, so Wando was I had gotten the largest I'd ever gotten during COVID. Largest I'd ever gotten since I started CrossFit during COVID, and just really had lost things. And really, the qualifier inspired me to kind of get back in shape. And I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to qualify, and if I'm going to qualify, I'm going to be in the best shape come Wando. So I had really dropped a lot of weight, and really almost dropped too much weight. I lost a lot of strength, but I was able to do and work on skills. I think I'm losing service. You got me? I actually competed there, and so I got to see the other side of the event there, and so I got to see the other side of the event, kind of both, and it helped out when needed. But it was awesome, man. The same energy that was at Iron Bridge was there, and yet it felt like the community was a little bit bigger. The word had spread. There was more people coming to watch other people as well, and just a phenomenal atmosphere. I remember you introduced the lift the night before for some divisions. I think for like the RX, and then the age group the top age group divisions or whatever, they had a snatch ladder. That they did the snatch ladder and row that they did the night before, and then we came back the next day and worked out. But great people. Darby's were fantastic. I remember one of the horror stories from there we'll share later as well. I learned some mistakes from there, but just a great place.
Yeah, just a great place. And that year, you know, just again to have the event grew, I think, that year from Iron Bridge to Wando. And one of the reasons we picked Wando is I think it's probably the biggest CrossFit gym in the Charleston area. And it worked, but we maxed it out. So during that event, Sylvia Darby comes up to Morgan and she goes, "Man, there's a lot of people here." And and there were actually, I had to pay a business to allow me to use their parking lot, and that was a fiasco. And that whole event leading up to it, I was so nervous about parking, and it's one of the reasons we went away from having the competition at gyms, because logistically it was just craziness trying to see how we could fit people, how we could do parking. But anyway, Sylvia Darby comes up to Morgan and goes, "There's a lot of people here. I think you guys," like, this is her probably kindly saying, "We don't want you back." But
hey, thanks for this year, but don't come back.
Yeah, she goes, "I think you need to go to like a Coliseum or something." And at that point, it's funny because at that point, the next day after the event, we had our first initial visit with the convention center, because I'm always thinking, you know, a year and ahead. So at that point, I was already like, "Hey, we need to be at the convention center." So that when we left town after Wando, we went to visit the convention center. So it's funny that Sylvia had said, "Hey, I think you need to do something else." yeah, we do need to do something else. And it's
Right,
how,
right, right.
we ended up at the convention center, but, it was just a great time. And what a fun event. What a fun event. That one, I got some horror stories for that one. That event about killed me. Uh, for many different reasons, but that was a fun one. So then we get down Wando, and like I said, at that point, in my mind, I'm like, all right, Kyle, we've got such great momentum. But the problem is, and this is a little, inside the hood, the issue that we were going to run into that I foresaw was that there would be no growth left for the event, because at that point we were just allowing people from the coast to participate, and natural attrition was going to happen, right? Typically, when you do CrossFit competing, most people probably compete for 3 to 4 years and then they kind of go off. That we would cycle through everybody for our event, and it would be hard for us to grow and to sustain the event. So at that point, we were like, all right, well, we need to open this up to a broader range, but we don't want to lose what's made us so successful, which I felt was the community aspect of the event. So rather than just open the doors wide in year 3, we allowed people, and we created regions, and we also created a team event, with the idea that eventually the two events would intermix. But for year 3, we didn't want to just completely blow everything up. We wanted to introduce a team event, have our individual event, that eventually merge them. Go into more of that later. So go into year 3, we get the convention center on board. We introduce a team event, and then we have our individual event at the Rat Hole in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
R.H. Acres,
AKA the Rat Hole.
yeah.
R.H. Acres is the formal name. The Rat Hole is what it's known as, but we didn't promote that. It was
No.
R.H. Acres. But more to come on the Rat Hole. So anyway, year 3, we have our qualifier again. At this point, I think we changed it from 5 weeks to 4 weeks, just to make it a little bit easier on everyone, not as big of a commitment. Also easier a little bit on us to manage the event. That year, we went to what did we do the first year? It was in Charleston.
Went to Sacred Pine.
That was the last week. Last week was at Sacred Pine. Oh, the first week was at CrossFit Crescent Coast. I think it was at Crescent Coast in Myrtle Beach.
Crescent Coast. Then we went to Carolina CrossFit in Columbia.
We went to Carolina CrossFit, right? Maybe we did do 5 weeks, because we did
843.
8-4. We went to 843 again, which
we did 5. We did 5 weeks because we did Kristen Graham's garage as well.
Graham's, and then we went to
Sacred Pine.
Yeah, and the thing about the qualifier that I'll talk about is just the memories that we've made, man. Just so many memories we've made and so many relationships. One of my fondest memories is for 2 straight years we went down to 843. And got really a great relationship with the guys down there. And Martin Cataliotto, who's the owner there, got to really spend a lot of time with them. And what I love about this is we get to go to gyms and see how other people do things. And I think that's one of the biggest eye-openers, because every gym is different and how people do things is different. And that gym down there, what really struck me about that gym is just how they rallied together. And it was a community unlike I've rarely seen that in all the gyms we've seen. And it was really cool to see that at that gym specifically, because then we'd go out to eat with the guys after and just have fun and generate relationships. And that is one of the best parts of the qualifier. And it's something we will never change. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about that in there is they figured out how to maximize space too. So just it's more than a CrossFit box, right? There's other things in there, and just hearing the story and hearing Martin's vision behind how everything's added and different things, just helping the overall product. Just a phenomenal time spent down there for sure.
Yeah, and that's one of the coolest gyms we've ever been to, no doubt. And so the qualifier, we did the same thing, traveled with the crew. It was just a great time. And then we moved into, in January, we had our team event, our 2-person team event at the Charleston Convention Center, which David was not supposed to compete at, nor was he slated to be at. He was not slated to help me or compete. But one thing did happen, and it was an ice storm and a winter weather week unlike anything I've ever seen since I've lived in the South. It was the worst possible week to have an event. The bridges froze, that we had to delay the event. It ended up going off without a hitch, just phenomenal. And it's just a great event, but the weather was awful, awful. And then David, you actually came out of the woodwork to come help.
So I was supposed to be running an event for about 900 college students in Myrtle Beach that weekend for college students across the state. And they canceled the event in Myrtle Beach because of the ice storm, mainly because people coming around the state were going to have problems getting there, and they were worried about that. And it actually nothing froze in Myrtle Beach that weekend at all. So they canceled the event, which then freed up my weekend. And so I called. He was like, "Hey man, I'm coming down." So I actually brought some supplies down to a college ministry friend of mine who was running a local event as well. And then I was there Friday, Saturday, Sunday to help out as needed.
And you were needed, my friend. You were needed. And I think at that point I might have said, hey, you can't compete anymore, but we weren't quite there yet. Because at that point, so January, we have the team competition, just an awesome time. The convention center was awesome. And then 2 months later, February, March, in April, we have the individual events, right? So we ran 2 events that year. The individual event, which was at RH Acres, aka the Rat Hole in Myrtle Beach, which to me was a lot of fun. And here's the reason why. It was the first event that we had ran that was in the place where I lived. So we live in Myrtle Beach. We run our event in Charleston, which as someone that has 2 young kids and a family, I have to get my whole family down to Charleston for the events. We have to pack up trucks. It's just it's an operation. That to have an event in Myrtle Beach was awesome. It was the least stressed I've ever been for an event because it was in the backyard. You didn't have to move anything. I didn't have to get my kids packed up. I didn't have to rent a house. It was awesome. But it was fun, man. The Rat Hole was interesting. It was for those that weren't at that event. This place, I couldn't find a location at all. I kept looking for a spot for this individual event. Looked in Charleston. We tried to have it at the Citadel. We looked everywhere. When I mean everywhere, I looked at having it at a church. Looked at having it at a park. Everywhere. Toward the Citadel. We thought we were actually going to have it at the Citadel, but then they came up with the price tag, and I was like, "Whoa, we won't ever have a Fittest of the Coast again if we do it here." So we ended up choosing RH Acres, and this place was phenomenal. It's basically like a David, how would you describe this place?
It's like a fair festival grounds is what it is. I mean, that's what it is. It reminded me of a fair festival grounds, but a smaller atmosphere,
Yeah, in the middle of a little neighbor, like a very boondocky neighbor.
I mean, it's probably less than 3 miles from my house, and yet you don't know it's there unless somebody tells you it's there. It's hidden behind a couple things. It's in the middle of not exactly high income area. It's a field that they've converted and figured out how to make some money on. They use it mainly for motorcycle rallies and other things.
They do some pretty sketchy stuff out there from what I've been told. And actually that's a story for another day, but I had a camper that I ran in. I stayed in a camper. Let's just say I was packing the whole weekend. I had to guard all the equipment and the sound equipment.
Dude, man, that was a fun play. I just remember bringing my lawnmower and being like, I got to cut the grass.
Yeah. So Dave, that's a funny story. So we show up and the owners were like, hey, we need this grass cut short because we're going to be painting lines and we're going to make a field for our rig and all that. And they cut it. And then David pulls up and he's like, bro, that ain't short.
That ain't going to work.
So he goes over to his house and he gets his lawnmower and he's push mowing this thing. But we get that place looking nice, and it was a phenomenal event. Tons of fun. Got a lot of good responses from that. The only thing that would ever keep us from probably having an event there again is just parking. We maxed out parking, and I had these we had these honor students from the Honors Academy volunteer, and these were these brainiac kids out there directing traffic, and apparently they were just phenomenal. But I was so worried about parking, And if it rained, they told me that people would get stuck. So I was like praying, dear God, don't let it rain. Don't let it rain. But at that event, after that event, because David, you competed at that event, right?
I did. And some events went well and some events went horribly wrong. And it is what it is. But yeah, I was competing.
But you also helped. You
I
competed.
did. And I did. I don't want to use that as an excuse, but my legs were certainly tired by the end of the weekend from more than just working out.
Yeah. And at that point, after that event, I looked at you, David, and what did I tell you?
You said you are officially retired from this event. From now on, you are only allowed to help.
Boom. I said, dude, you're done. You're done competing. I need your help. And that was your last Fittest of the Coast event ever.
For the time being, right?
No, you're done. You're done. But yeah, so that was year 3, and that was such a fun, fulfilling year because it felt like, for me, I just had so much going on because we went from one event to the next event to already just getting ready to do the next qualifier. And it's actually the reason why we're doing a podcast, because I'm bored out of my mind right now. Got nothing going on. I'm like, shoot, we might as well do a podcast. But so year 3 ends and we go into the qualifier, which was this past fall. At this point, the event is wide open to anybody. And we did 4 weeks. And this year
was the transition
this was the year we moved to 4 weeks. Yep. So the first week, this is fun. So the first week we were supposed to go down to Rap City, down in Charleston, which I was super excited about. Like, I haven't been able to get into Rap City, but I've heard really good things. And then a hurricane came and just
flooded.
Just,
downtown Charleston was flooding.
Yeah, so we ended up having to throw an audible, do it at our home gym, which is CrossFit Updog, which was phenomenal. It was actually a ton of fun to be able to do it there. So blessing in disguise. Week 2, what did we do week 2?
We went down to Beaufort.
We went to Humidity.
Yep.
And got to hang out there and have some dinner with the legend Dave Hardy.
That's right. He took us to this place. He said, look, I got this place in downtown. I got reservations for us. And he took us to the place where the food was. And
what about the food? You didn't say nothing.
It was where the food was. It was Dave Hardy's favorite place, man. He took us to it. I remember you got like a flatbread pizza or something, which was excellent.
Yeah.
I got I can't remember what I ordered, but it was some meat dish, but I was wondering where the rest of my food was when they brought it out.
Yeah. So David,
me and Alex ordered the same thing. And me and Alex, it's like
portions were not big enough for them. So actually, I think I had to, Alex after that was like, dude, you got to go to McDonald's. I need a burger. I need some meat, man. He was like, I didn't get no food. I'm hungry.
That's exactly what he said. And we actually drove back that night.
We didn't get a hotel,
we were driving back that night, but it was great. It was a great place to eat. Definitely. It was more of a date spot than like a hangout spot. So I kind of felt awkward when we walked in because people were on a bunch of dates. But it was a great time. All the folks really, there was probably like 10 folks from the gym came and ate with us.
That was awesome. Just talk to Jim, Corey, who owns Humidity, and his wife.
Go
ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and I think Leah was there for spring break. She's up at Anderson. She works at Electric City normally, but she's from that area. She was there.
Patrick.
Pat was there. So just really fun time hanging out and hearing stories and hearing their like what they do in real life was awesome too.
Yeah. That's why I love the qualifier so much. You just get to have these relationships with folks. And Dave Hardy is actually one of those folks who you get to know over the years, and he's a real special guy to this event. And, so get to spend some time with those folks. Love it, and that's a really cool thing. After Humidity, we went for the first time to North Carolina.
Apex, right?
Yeah, we went to Apex. We went to CrossFit Surmount with that's Tom Pecora's gym. And that was really cool. Tom's a great dude. Tom's a bundle of energy. And that was a really cool gym as well. They had a cool mural in the back. But first time in North Carolina, they welcomed us. And that was just an awesome gym to go to.
Bro.
Awesome.
And that gym, they had like a ton of nationalities represented there. Do you remember that? And they brought all like different kinds of food. There was like some samosas that somebody that made. They were just unbelievable.
Yeah, that was cool because there was a lot of diversity in that gym, and it was cool to see. That's what's so great about CrossFit, right? Is this place where people of every different walk of life come together within inside the walls of the gym, and you become family. No other place aside from church, in my opinion, has that effect on somebody.
That's right.
Yeah. So after Sermont, we went back to North Carolina the next week to CrossFit DHF in Denver, which again, probably one of the coolest gyms I've ever been to. That was a multi-facility gym. For those that don't know what it's like, they had just a regular old like Globo gym style. They had like, boot camp classes. They had spin classes. And then they had this amazing CrossFit facility, and they had this amazing outside turf area. And we did that. And they actually run a CrossFit competition in the fall. So if you're looking for a cool competition, check that one out. If the schedule aligns, I'd like to go up there and compete just because they have such a cool facility.
What's that, Lake Norman Fit Fest? Is that what that one's called?
Yeah, I think they just changed it to the Fit Fest though.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was an awesome gym to go to. So yeah, we wrapped that up, and then it was time to kind of prepare for the event that we had in February, where we were going to bring our two events together. And at that point, it was going to be our biggest event. We had close to 1,000 competitors. I was personally nervous about space. I was like, this is going to get packed. And it was packed, but it was just an amazing environment. To see just so many people, but just to see that despite how the event had changed from what we talked about at Ironbridge to where we are, I felt like we hadn't lost that excitement and that sense of community that we were looking to not lose.
Yeah. And I got to walk around. I mean, when fires weren't happening, it freed me up to kind of go see people hanging out, talking, having fun, but then also people cheering each other on, different divisions, different things. Me catching up with friends who maybe had been there year one, but hadn't come for a couple of years. We're back. Some new friends this was their first year experience, and they walked in and they were like, man, this is like a regional. I mean, literally multiple times people said, this is what regionals feels like, back when CrossFit used to do regionals and things like that. So just really, really incredible atmosphere this year for sure.
Yeah, and I think when you hear stuff like that, David, like as well as anyone, the amount of hours that go into just that weekend when we set up it, to hear people that they're excited and that they appreciate and they feel like what they are participating in is worth their time and their money. That means the world. That, hey, we've done something right? You don't want people to leave going, well, this was a waste of time.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So that's how we got to where we are today. And it's where we go to. So the next, David, during these 5 years, we've had, countless amount of horror stories is what I'll call them, that for all intents and purposes, people, we haven't completely messed up, but there are things that when you look back, and I look back, I'm like, well, that was absolutely stupid, or, oh my gosh, we are idiots, or, oh, that was a bad decision. I have so many stories of those, and I want to share them because I think they're pretty comical in some regards. And the one I want to share today is, since we're going through the history, is our first year.
Make it happen. Let us hear it.
So our first year at Ironbridge, we get there on Friday and we start setting up. And one of the challenges, it's also one of the other challenges about why we moved away from having competitions at gyms that weren't, because we don't own a gym. We had to do it at other people's, is you don't know the layout. You're not there every day. You go there and you visit it and you're like, okay, we can do this, this, and this. But then when you get there and you start setting up, you're like, well, crap, this isn't how I thought or envisioned this space to be. And that happened in Ironbridge. In Ironbridge, we created a workout that we ran 2 workouts, one inside the gym and one outside the gym. We created a workout for the outside of the gym where you had to do a 200-meter run. And in our mind, I think we kind of went there once. We never really ran the course, but we looked on Google Maps. We were like, we'll have them run this way. Well, we get to the parking lot to set it up. It's probably at this point 10 p.m., 11 p.m. on Friday night. We're just exhausted. It's me and Josh and Steve Money. That's who I remember being there. So Josh Desmond is my brother-in-law, and Steve Money helps us out at a lot of our events. We're out there setting it up, and within 5 minutes, we're like, this isn't going to work because the freaking ground was a hill. And we were going to have people doing double unders and doing all sorts of things basically on a hill. And we were like, this isn't going to work. So then we had to move the entire workout to the opposite end. And at this point, I think we got distracted and we had to go do something else. And we had to figure out how we were going to set this workout up. And at this point, I think I told Steve Money, I said, dude, get out of here. This is ridiculous. At this point, I think it's 1 a.m. And me and Josh are in the parking lot. At this point, it's Saturday morning. The competition starts in 7 hours. And it's 1 a.m. and we're trying to figure out this running route. And we're just racking our brains going, why can we not figure this out? And at this point, I'm just thinking to myself, Josh, we are idiots. How are we going to put on an event and we can't even figure out how people can run 200 meters? So at this point, we keep tinkering. At this point, it's 2 a.m. I kid you not. It's 2 in the morning. And finally, I think at this point, we're just exhausted. Josh looks at me and he goes, dude, this is what we're going to do. And he says, this is how we're going to have them run. And I'm like, it's brilliant. Brilliant. And then I was like, well, how do we know if it's 200 meters? It's 2 a.m. It's pitch black. Don't have a tape measure. Don't have anything. So he's like, I'm like, dude, I'm going to get in my truck and I'm going to drive and look at the odometer until it reads 200 meters. So it's 2 a.m. Our competition starts in 6 hours, and I'm driving in my truck trying to figure out how far 200 meters is in the parking lot of Iron Bridge. We figured it out. The event was awesome. Nobody knew the difference. The only people that knew were me and Josh, who hated our life. And to this day, Josh still brings up, well, who was with you at 2 a.m. the first year of the event? And Josh, that was Josh. But yeah, so that moment, I just felt like the biggest idiot. And if I could have done it over again, I probably would have visited Iron Bridge a couple more times and did all the workouts there. But it's just easier said than done when you're like 3 hours away. So yeah, that was a dumb moment.
Yeah, I don't think any athlete probably would have given you grief. It was only 175 meters coming back to those double unders. Because I remember that workout and they were coming back dragging, just trying to get to that mat to do them. Yeah. But I remember you telling me that on Saturday, and I was like looking at you like, what? You guys did what? Like I couldn't fathom how. Because you're right, the other side was on a slant. In fact, when they run kind of up down the road, or when they were at that facility back in the day, they would take off down the road. You couldn't run down the road because the traffic pattern was there.
That's what it was, because I tested that workout at the gym at Iron Bridge. I forget why I was in town that week. Oh, my wife was running the half marathon. That's what it was. I tested the workout and ran the way I wanted them to run. But I didn't realize that where we were going to have them be was on a slanted part of the road. So we basically had to flip the whole setup. And at that point, I was like, what are we doing? But it worked. Nobody knew the difference. And it was a fun event.
How many more years is Josh going to bring that up to you think?
Oh, he'll bring it up till the day we die. I swear to you, he probably brings it up weekly. Like if I ever ask him, or ask a favor, he's like, well, I did stay up. Or if he ever asks me something, that's what he'll go, well, I'm the guy that was there at 2 a.m. So did he mention any time during that time at 2 a.m. Where his brother was? No, because I don't think at that point we had much faith in Alex for much, right? Because he didn't have he didn't have much of a role at that point, right? Like,
Yeah, he was just running the sound at the thing in the
yeah,
inside part.
like Josh, because Alex, I don't think Alex had much experience with CrossFit events at that point, right?
Yeah, I don't think so.
It's like because Josh, yeah, Alex was running the sound because Josh was running the outside workout. I think that's how it was. Or Josh ran, he did something. Josh and Steve.
Josh was outside. Josh ran the outside workouts, and you ran the inside workouts.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was one of that was actually that's not a very bad horror stories. We'll go into details on, one time I got the worms when we had worms at our team event. My trailer broke down in a highway in Florida while I was hauling them. We had another one that David was part where our lift gate wasn't big enough, and we had to hand load close to 3 tons worth of rubber matting by hand, which was terrible. We've got stories upon stories. A scoreboard broke at 2 a.m. That the Wando year was by far a great event, but for me physically, that was the worst year physically. I about died. Actually, my whole body cramped up the day after that event. I remember just locked up. I was like, I can't move, sweetie. And I'm yelling to Morgan, I need you to massage me. But anyway, but David, this was fun. I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, man. Sounds good. Thanks for listening, everybody.